Right, Maui, what is your good point?
Yeah, just making sure you saw that I changed it
Yeah,
just a few minutes ago,
all
right?
good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that this is awesome. I feel like finally we're no longer going to have to witness this device spectacle of him as an in-game leader. We're going to finally get cadiaN on this team, and I feel like this is just in many ways weird, but I'm just going to say it's a good point for me. It's a good point because I don't really want to see device in-game lead anymore. Watching the other players on Astralis kind of have they've just been incredibly inconsistent since he's taken over in-game leading. Like at Cologne, when device was the only player with above a 1.0 rating practically, everybody else was just doing so much worse than him. And at this most recent EPL, I feel like it was spread out a little bit more, but they didn't make it to playoffs even. And so there's so many things that you can really pick at for things that weren't working. And I just really think that this team needed to change up their style tremendously. cadiaN called a style that I always felt should work in CS2, especially given Peeker's advantage seems to be a topic that is constantly brought up in terms of the mechanics of the game. And so having an active-sided defense as opposed to what Astralis were doing, which was kind of just relying on individuals a little bit more, I feel like this is going to boost some of the players like Yabby, like Stown, who in many ways felt like they only succeeded because they were playing under cadiaN. What they were underneath device was pretty much just it was just so much weaker than anything we had seen for so long. And I just think that the one thing that's a big hesitation, why I'm just like not diving in deep, is that I'm gonna have to watch cadiaN Rifle. I think that's the one thing where I'm just
that's why I'm shocked you picked this as your good point. I thought it would be like ugly or something.
That's the one thing.
Okay.
But I
like I'm ready to go in on this
calling style. The calling style is going to improve tremendously. That's why I'm so in on it. I'm not jumping both feet in, and that's why I'm like trying to qualify every single statement that I'm bringing out right now. But I will say that I think that Yabby's going to play better, Stown's going to play better, cadiaN himself as an individual is going to probably suck, but I think that this is going to help this team as a whole, and I feel like they're more prone to now make bigger runs than they have in the past.
Thoughts, Ash?
Just if I assume we're coming to this as a bad point as well, right?
I'm just by the way, I'm don't worry. Like I said, I'm going to roast this point, so I'm amazed he picked this. Good. You can disagree if you want. Yeah, you can. Basically, what are your thoughts on cadiaN joining?
I mean, if it's a good point, I have to say good points. I think I'm struggling, but if it's to say bad points, I see so many angles of this that I don't really like them. The good thing, obviously, is they know what they're getting, right? At the very least, they've got Yawn and Stabby who can. I even don't say it on purpose, but they've got those guys that at least know what they're getting. But my flip side is you're basically getting the cadiaN that you got rid of. I know it's not a heroic now, but it's basically what's the difference, in the end. You got rid of him. He went to Liquid. They talk about how much he failed and it was a disaster. And then the worst part of cadiaN is rifling. And you're now going to bring him back. And it feels like it's just set up to fail, like big time for me. And I've like other angles as well. Because I think if I think the human part of things, I think of someone like HooXi. And I'm like, if he's coming back to tier 1, this is kind of the team I think, it makes the most sense. And now I'm thinking if he wants to go to Astralis, which I assume he's never been on, he's never going to go to Astralis now. This is him kind of done because cadiaN's probably going to be worse on the rifle than HooXi is. And the fact that the public perception of this team is going to be horrible because they're going to think that there's a rift there no matter what between the players.
Yeah.
And I don't really know where does HooXi ever come back from this now, because what has to happen? I hope that he's just turned this team down and he doesn't want to go there, because this is really bad luck now, I think, for him. And I really do actually, I'm not saying I don't think HooXi is a superstar or anything, but I think there is a reason HooXi was on G2 as long as it. I think he has a clear way of playing. I think he has some leadership skills as well. But now I'm kind of like, this is a really bad look for him to go back to a guy that he clearly didn't want, who wasn't working after a failure, and then bring him back as a rifler ahead of HooXi. It's a bit of a downer for me on him, and I hope that he just turned this down, and it wasn't them turning him down.
This is kind of a two-part point because my bad sort of talks about the HooXi side of it.
We'll get to that. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the problem I have with this move, I'm just going to roast the whole thing. I actually don't think it's a good move at all. It's good in this one sense, right? But the problem is this already has built into it a trap, which is it's good in the same way as when they originally announced this Astralis super team at the beginning of the year. That could have been really good. Now, you don't know how. You never knew how would Blame F work with Device, work with Stair. You know, that never made sense. But you looked at the players and you were like, look, maybe there's some way to make this lineup work. And on paper, it should have been really awesome. It was all mega fraggers, right? But you saw that team didn't work. I think this is like another version of that. Like, you just, like you say, Ash, you're just walking into a bunch of obvious problems on day one that have to almost be resolved, or like they have to somehow not exist anymore. Because I think this move's trash. Like, I'll save until I do my own video on this topic, because I'll be able to do like a whole 20-minute rant, like a bit like what I tweeted, where basically it's like, if I was actually any org in esports, I would never sign Danish players unless I already check on the door and we are Astralis. Because, bro, they will just sabotage your team and leave fucking 8 months later and just remake the team in Astralis. Like, what am I doing at this point in time? I'm spending millions on this shit. Like, this money doesn't grow on trees, you morons. Where do you think all that massive salary? So I won't do that. Save that, pause. That'll be on Thorin's channel. Don't worry about that one. But what I'll do is I'll just do cadiaN only, because, bro, almost every reason I can think of is wrong. Like, one, so he's going to join, but he's not the AWPer, right? That's positive in terms of Device, because it means Device probably be better as an AWPer. But the downside I see immediately is, right, first of all, I don't know how cadiaN would call around someone else primary AWPering. That can't be taken for granted. Here's the thing. Normally, I don't want the AWPer to be the IGL. But if the AWPer already is the IGL, as in he was an AWPer first, then he became an IGL, his whole vision of what IGL is going to be dominated by him being the one on the AWP. And I will say it, this is why Maui made that point. cadiaN wasn't just the AWPer like Nitro and Liquid, where it's like, I'll do it on the right side or on a CT side, or if I need. He was doing it like on T side, like, boost me so I can pick simple on Na'Vi. Like, he was doing calls that were like literally, I'm calling up, me, number 9, cadiaN. I'm going for the shot. Like, bro, that's not going to be the same when it's Device. Like, you aren't the one doing that. Also, here's one thing when you are an IGL, you sometimes do think. The reason why I always thought Device was the dream AWPer for any coach or IGL. It's because, bro, my dream as an IGL is that if I could have the best possible comms for my AWPer, because my AWPer can see more distance, he locks off certain areas, he has scouts information I can't, he can take peeks I can't as a normal rifler, right? cadiaN had all these advantages. They're all going to be stripped from him now. All that goes away. And then and in this scenario, look, we can all go, well, Device seemed like he had a great relationship with Gliv. Yeah, who the fuck knows what it's like with cadiaN though, bro? Like, you never know what the comms are like. You never know if people are simpatico, if they're on the same page. So already that's a concern. Then when you shift to the idea he's going to IGL, that's why the IGL thing worries me a bit. Normally, I would just say, like, for example, of the two of them, I actually would have preferred James did this move. He just went to IGL and then IGL'd and, went off the AWP and let, like, Monacy or something join VP would have been my dream. The actual idea cadiaN doesn't open than IGLs. I also feel like, I agree on CT side, Maui. That style actually could be really good from CS2. Actually looks like a great style for CS. Problem I have is on T side again. He did do a lot of calls based around him being like in the middle of the map, him setting up his AWP shot, him moving up with the pack. Like it seemed like a lot of that call. So I can give him the props. Like the obvious upside here, but it's mental, is if we just pretend the whole drama where they left Heroic and fucked the whole org didn't happen, then you can maybe cope by saying, maybe he really is the Stown Whisperer, which I don't really know if that even works. Because first of all, when they switched to Device, Stown was pretty good initially. Secondly, he had the same problems. And then thirdly, what do people actually think cadiaN's whispering in his ear that makes him better smart? Like, I don't really actually know what people think they're making that point by that, because I don't think that's why they're worse, for example. And so, yeah, I don't really get it myself. And then lastly, I'll put this out there as well. Since the player they're kicking is fucking Bro, right, even if we assume, and this is a big assumption, that cadiaN is going to not only not up, he's going to humble himself and be like a Huxley-esque, I just have to play this shit roles player, that still probably puts a lot of stress on Stair's role though. Like, is he really just doing only his role again? Isn't he also going to have to take some spots or some shit that, like, surely he's further down the hierarchy now? And so the other problem I have is, like, I just feel like it's a mess of roles and attitudes, and do people are they even on the same page in terms of how they see CS? By the way, I think Device and cadiaN look like they have a very different perspective on CS than each other. So I don't know. I think it's a terrible move, personally. I hate it. I hate this move.
I do feel like it's gonna rejuvenate Stown though. But okay.
I mean, it has to. That's got to be an upside.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's. I mean, for them to actually finally say that we were wrong that we actually want to play with cadiaN again. I feel like Stown and Yabby.
Bro, the worst thing about this is it doesn't even look like they actually believe that. It's like for real, they were like, "Oh no, we do want to play with him, just not in heroic." It's like, what are you talking about? Like, imagine being heroic after this. By the way, like, was it? By the way, if it wasn't for the fact there's like 9 months between it, I would go full by the numbers, Thorin, and just do a whole like conspiracy theory that this was like another Nicola Nyholm genius, like slow burn plan the whole time to like we just all gradually leave heroic and then we rejoin later on in Astralis. Like it almost looks like some fucking 7D chess, doesn't it?
I was going to say that as well.
It does though, doesn't it? It's like it low key. In the end, hasn't Astralis won in every possible sense and destroyed heroic? Like what have we done?
In sifting through the comments for this one from other pundits, I did find some people saying, was this just like the most roundabout way to actually get cadiaN off the op finally and get a better opper for heroic? Because I mean, Stown and Yabby at some point they probably actually were okay with the calling. It's just that they couldn't believe in cadiaN as their primary opper. But just like by the numbers really quickly, like Stown hadn't had an event with a sub 1.0 rating for heroic since 2021. Like that's 2022, 23, and the very end of him playing for their team where he was just seriously like so consistent. And with Astralis already, he had 5 events where he had well beneath a 1.0 rating. Like I'm talking 0.75, 0.87, 0.80, and that's in such a short span of time with them. So he definitely at this point realized, okay, the best IGL that I've played with is cadiaN. We want to get I need cadiaN to be my caller again, even if there are going to be repercussions in terms of Bro's obviously a better rifler than cadiaN is, but they just need better calling overall.
I think it's actually deeper than that for Stown, because I think that heroic had such a clear way of playing it, especially on the T sides. They basically had 3 guys that were basically all the time were going to jump out no matter what, and it was always 3 different guys. Always Jabby, always Shush, and always Tesses, always jumping out. And Stan would never ever be that guy, and he would always be the guy last alive with cadiaN. He's going to go in and he's going to get 1 kill. He's going to survive all the time, and he was so clearly like the superstar of that team because of the system they played. And their system they played was like. Honestly, it was one of the hardest ones to play against. You couldn't prep against it. It was mixed up brilliantly all the time. And I think his role in that team was so clear that he was a star player. This is something that elevates anyone. If you know that you're in the team and you are the best player and the team is set up to be around you and it's playing to all your strengths, you're going to see everything that's going to work, right? And I think Astralis themselves, the other players, they know they cannot set the game up just to set themselves up because the team has such high expectations. They're setting the team way to win, and they just don't have the same sort of system that cadiaN does. And I think cadiaN's one of the only guys I've seen in the last few years where it's such a clear, obvious system and he was the main beneficiary of that all the time. So I think for sure, if they implement that again, I don't know if they will, because cadiaN rifling, is cadiaN going to be the guy jumping in and struggling on CT side? I think that's really, he's setting himself up to fail, and also the expectations of the org. He has to kill it, and I don't think he really has a choice. He's already on the. People always want this to fail because of the whole media side of things, the disaster that it was, the past with the cheating and stuff like this. No one's on their side, and he has to win them over. And this is. It's a really difficult one, but I think he's a phenomenal leader, and now he has to really prove himself hard, and this is really difficult for him. I think he could have landed on way better teams and looks better than this, but for Stown, this is probably great. For him, I think this might be a real difficult one.
The funny thing is, I even have on past shows, I might even have done a hot take point made. I even used to say back in the day, the biggest problem I always had with heroic was that they themselves didn't seem to ever have any interest in like testing the transfer market and paying for people. Like there was never even a rumor, even behind the scenes guys, ever that they get like Device, Carrigan, like the biggest names from Denmark that you would think if you're this team and you could bring one of these players in, don't you just go to the absolute top? So the funny thing is, I used to myself speculate, why can't cadiaN in CS2 this is just be IGL and bring Device in? Wouldn't that be like the ultimate team? But the difference is that heroic team was super tight. Think how great the chemistry was. Also, the one thing people are always going to ignore, like notice in this discussion, we're talking like because you've got Yabby, Stown, and cadiaN, it's basically heroic. It's like we are missing 2 of the like most reliable, selfless role players in all of fucking World Counter-Strike, in Tessus and Shush, who, by the way, still do that in heroic now, even when heroic's up and down as fuck. Like, I think you can't ignore like the quality those players had in like rounding out the like. To me, they're part of why the chemistry was so tight. Like they were just fucking people who were the ultimate soldiers. Whereas these other guys clearly do have a bit of the ego, and they have to be catered to and given the resources. And then lastly, I'll just say this: the reason why I would have wanted Device in CS:GO with cadiaN is I also think think cadiaN's style was one of those styles that worked way better with MR15 than MR12. Right? I've heard, it might be more exaggerated in Liquid, but in Liquid, they just told me straight up, the players in that team, that he just tried to call, like, you could imagine, like, a massive ego. Like, basically, the way he called is what fans stupidly think is how Carrigan calls, which isn't true, which he doesn't really just sit down and goes, no one knows my plan. I don't know my plan. So how can the enemy know my plan? Now watch as I genius Magnus Carlsen come up with the move. He doesn't really do that, guys. He actually does study the demo and he has a rough game plan and he thinks about what he's going to call for you. And then, yeah, on the fly, he can add in a few genius calls to rise Carrigan, right? I've heard cadiaN was doing the Nightmare Fuel caricature of that, where he really was from the beginning of the game to the end. It's like, oh, nice playbook, won't need that, chucking it out. And just starting from like round one, just doing crazy like hero calls like it's a pog every fucking round. And that, by the way, I've heard those players hella didn't fuck with that. Like, they tried it a few times, and when it wasn't working, they were like, is he for real? This is like, wait a minute, you mean actually like like that fucking mad statement Zonic said about being the bag? You mean cadiaN's system is he's the system? Like, what? Don't we get any input? And so all I'll say is that better not be what he's going to do here. Because if he is, one, I don't think that's going to work. And two, I can't even imagine how people like Device are going to just go, yeah, sure, keep telling me cadiaN everything to do. Like, how's that going to work? So I think that one's mad. So the difference is, when I wanted him to join in CSGO, I had way more confidence in his style. Also, the thing I was going to say was, I think in MR15, someone like cadiaN, I actually think the same with Snappy, I think they are some of the biggest victims of MR12. They have way less time to cook on T-side. Those are the guys where that 3 extra gun rounds is the time they need to figure out the round sometimes, or to turn a game, or to do the extra 2 rounds of conditioning that then make that round work for the rest of the map, and you win the 40 rounds that you need. You know, they're the guys where they get 2 unlucky rounds and get money broken, so their T-half's just ruined, and you don't see the brilliance. Notice how both of them seem like half as good as a caller now. Like, I don't think that's a coincidence. So I'm actually more worried about it being CS2 as well. I also feel like they're going off some shit of like, think about this. Now they're going to attempt the craziest experimental move. They're going to try and pair the heroic CSGO system with however Device from old Astralis views CS, and then stays just there like, you're not going to cut me though, right, guys? Like, fuck knows what that guy's life's like now, by the way. He's like actually fucking, he's like the guy who knows he's going to be voted off like Big Brother or something. You might as well do whatever you want now, Stare. Like, I guess in like 6 months it's Huxley or blame out for someone coming in. Like, you could just fucking, just chill, just enjoy the game, don't worry about it. I think this one's mad. What I can't handle, I want to throw it back to you, Maui, is, why did you just come straight out the gate when this is like a good point? Like I say this point, listen, there's some positives, but this is ass. Why are you going, this is good? Why is this good?
I mean, it's good because the calling's going to be better in my eyes, because I really started to.
It's good for Astralis then. You think it's better than what Astralis had? How about that way? It's better than what they had.
Yes.
Right,
the take is that this is going to upgrade their team lightly. I'm not necessarily saying that this is going to just be like a world-beating team out the get-go, but I do think that the way that Device was calling after a while, like, dude, there were so many T-sides. It's actually kind of crazy when I looked at the numbers on Brown win percentage versus the eye test of what that T-side looked like. Sometimes the amount of times someone like Yabby Stound would win a 2v3 or a 2v4 to win them a T-side round instead of actually being the calls that were actually good for them. That was something that was where the round win percentage was higher than I actually felt like the calling was, as in terms of how good it is. Kind of like what's happening with G2 in my eyes right now. But now I just think that there's going to be better setup overall. And I also will say that I felt like the CT side from Astralis was kind of lifeless sometimes. It didn't always feel like it had the most just good ideas. People weren't taking enough risks, and I do feel like you need to take more risks. And really, I think the main reason I just think this is good overall is that I really stand by the idea that the way cadiaN called CT sides when Heroic were in their prime is the way you should be playing a CT side. And if he can convince everybody to get on board, and he should be able to, given that it's Stound and Yabby, to go back to what was working for them when they were actually winning, then I feel like this team can actually be a trailblazing team for how a meta should be played in CS2.
Okay. Yeah, I can. Yeah, the CT side, the way they prepped and everything, they always started every game on fire, right? And in MR12 you have to start on fire. So I can see that side. I can see that side working, to be honest. And the thing is, now with them, you'll see they'll definitely see a way of playing. Sorry, the way they play, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But at least you're going to see him have his impact, I think.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.